Hey guys, what's up? It's Gray. So 0.3, right? The announcement just around the corner. And I'm here with some specters. And there's a lot of hype. There was a lot of hype at the beginning of Dawn of the Hunt with specters. Everyone was excited. And then we got hit with the biggest nerf bat in the world, right? The specters are kind of half-baked. They're not that great. They're weak towards the end game. You can't even get to level 40. There's a lot of issues, but there's a lot of good things about them too. So for example, I just have a few specters right here. Like, they're really good for mapping. They have a lot of really good like abilities. My favorite are these guys. Here's some ranged ones. These are the Thurmaturgists, right? They have some pretty good abilities. And in this list, I'm going to go over a few of the specters that I like. There's a lot of them that are really good. Some of them have abilities that you've never even seen, that you don't even have. Like, there's a Vaal Priest with a unique, like, it's kind of like a lightning that kind of snakes on the ground kind of thing. You know, there's a lot of good abilities that we can take advantage of, and I'm really curious to see where they're going to go with specters, right? Because to make a lot of them viable, you have to use this weapon swap technique. You either have to have 2 copies of the specter, and then you'll just constantly weapon swap in order to reload the ability to make it work, you know? But it'll be interesting to see where they go with the specters, because if you look at this, right? In this interview, you've got our boy, Talkative Try, talking to Jonathan Rogers. Hold on, let me change the audio. So this is the rare monster special abilities.
Monsters will be different compared to rare monsters, not only in terms of the random modifiers that spawn on them, but the fact that, let's say, a vulture demon that is rare will have an extra actual ability compared to a magic or common vulture demon. I've never noticed those in game. Are those still in game? And I'm just not noticing them.
I know what you mean. So it didn't actually happen as much as I had expected that to actually happen. So I think there's probably like 3 monsters or something like that ended up actually doing that, and like that was way less than what we expected.
And there's
like,
only
I know
3
one of them
of them.
is like the Death Knights have an extra ability and like a few things like
Boom.
that. But
That's it. That's all you need to hear. Death Knight. Death Knights have the extra ability. And as of right now, Death Knights are the one specter where they have actually really decent damage. He actually named the Death Knights. Yeah, dude, I saw this video and I was like, he knows, right? So I'm super hyped. I'm hyped that in 0.3 there's gonna be more rare versions of specters that do that Death Knight type of damage. And if you haven't seen the Death Knight damage, I'll put it in here somewhere, you can see it. But if they have more rare versions of these specters that just do, like, you know, more end game tier level of damage, it's gonna be a blast for sure, especially with a new chapter, new enemies. Like my favorite enemy, my favorite specter, the Vaal Vulture, he's expensive, but if there's a rare version that does Death Knight damage, oh man, you know. And then on top of that, there's all these other specters that they've got that do have some really interesting abilities. It's really curious to see where they go to get them to work, because some of them, their abilities have a really long attack time, or a really low attack speed, I should say. So that needs to get adjusted. They're probably gonna have to add in different, like, you know, support gems or something like that. Just kind of rework a lot of them individually. And it is kind of early access, so, you know, we got to give them some time. It just sucks because we want to have fun now. But yeah, check out the list and use the timestamps to check it out. So before we get into our list of melee specters and ranged specters, let's just show off the elite Death Knights, right? To see, like, their damage, essentially. They have an extra ability. It's this forward AoE slash attack, and each slash is like 800k to like 1,000,000. So once they start to get rolling, they do some pretty good damage, right? Not bad for specters. So if all specters had like an elite version, which, you know, maybe not all of them, but all the good ones, man, 0.3 is gonna be good. But yeah, so these are like the elite versions, right? So first off, we're going to start off with melee minions. The first one up, in no order, right, is the Vaal Vultures. I was just using these guys. To me, these guys have the best AI. Their only drawback is they're really expensive. And I can see in the differentiation why they're so expensive, because they're really good. They have a really far aggro range, AoE attack, they do heavy damage. They have a lot of life too, like pretty decent, not the most life, but if you wanted to play RF style, like, you know, I forget his name, he eludes me right now. You could use him for a RF style. And then the only issue with melee minions too, though, is they kind of rely a lot on Rupture the Soul. So if you do plan in 0.3 playing with like some type of melee minion or maybe melee specters, you're gonna probably want to lean into using a Lich, right? Because that Rupture the Soul really makes things a lot better. I mean, you don't really need it. I've played these guys without Rupture the Soul, but just having it, it makes clear more enjoyable. It makes it smoother. It kind of really makes the Lich kind of best in class unless we get some type of support gem. Some type of support gem for AoE or something like that. The second melee Spectre on the list is the Bladedash Transcendant. These guys are really nice. They're one of the few melee ones with enough movement speed to actually keep up with the player. They have a decent cost. They have a gap closing ability, and they hit pretty hard. They are a little bit more expensive, but you can have a decent amount of them. And if you look at them, you know, as you're seeing in the gameplay, they're actually pretty good and they're fun. They move really quick. The only downside I would say is their leap attack is on a cooldown. It's not like the Vaal Vulture. The Vaal Vulture is on his own program. He has like no cooldown for his leap. But these guys do. They have a, you know, a little bit of a cooldown, but they're not bad. You can take these guys into like a small map. They do really well. But once again, it's like it's kind of like a Rupture the Soul is like a requirement for these guys to be good. So that's a thing that you kind of have to keep in mind. But if you look at them, super fun. Give these guys like an A grade for melee Spectres. Hopefully there's either like a skill gem or something that gets added in to kind of help the other melee Spectres, because it makes it really hard to try to like get those other ones to work, you know? Now the next melee Spectre up is the Forgotten Satyr. These guys are actually pretty good. They're almost like the ideal skeletal reaver, honestly. They have a gap closing ability. They're not expensive. You know, single target. Really simple. They have a short jump attack. You'll see it, right? And you can get a lot of them. So it's almost like, you know, they're exactly what the skeletal reaver needs to have, right? Look at that jumping gap ability. So it's kind of sad because every time I look at melee Spectres or melee minions, it always goes back to comparing it to the skeletal reaver, because they're an awesome skeleton. Everyone wants to use them. They have like a really good rage ability. Hopefully they get a rework on that ability. But at the same time, as like for GGG, right? They have to design these minions or these Spectres or monsters different so they feel unique. So I don't know what they'll go about doing that, but this is another example of like a really good idea for a melee Spectre. This is like a humble looking monster too. He's just a little horn goat dude, runs around. Once again, you need to have the Lich, right? Rupture the Soul is kind of really important, but they do some good damage. But you can just see, right, for the melee Spectres, they got some really good ideas. But there's really only like maybe 4 or 5 of them that are really good. It's really hard to justify having a melee minion that doesn't have some type of gap closing ability. All right, the honorable mention is the Quadrilla right here. And you get him kind of soon. Early, he's in Act 2. And you know, he does have a gap closing ability. But the Quadrillas are weird. Like, so if you look at them, they have like a body blocking issue. You see how they can't jump through each other? They can't jump through each other, and they have a short melee range. So even though the Quadrilla is a decent, like, has a decent gap closing ability, 1, he's expensive, and 2, he gets in his own way. So it's probably by design because you want the Spectres to feel different. But I also feel like, you know, this is the part where support gems come in. Maybe they have a support gem that increases like the melee attack range. That would be kind of nice, because then that would kind of solve body blocking, especially with like Reavers. When you have an army of Reavers and they surround the target, the ones in the back, because they can't reach, they can't attack. So maybe having like a support gem that increases range and stuff for melee attack, something like that. There's a lot of things that you could like do, you know, but there's like inherent problems with Spectres. Like, look at this. They're just in their own way, right? Maybe if there was an AoE support gem, melee splash, right? That would be good. But it's like a really good... basically a really good Spectre, but because of like some weird mechanical issues, it doesn't execute really well. And then at the same time, again, right, you gotta run Rupture the Soul to make it really feel good. Otherwise, it is kind of slow. All right, so let's talk about the ranged minions. The first one up, the Rotting Demolitionist. So what you're looking at now, this is a special minion. You basically get it from a unique map, Castaway, but his first attack is he throws a barrel. Right? It's an explosive barrel, and it's really fun. But it is a little weird. The way you play it is you're taking advantage of a mechanic, right? Which is the weapon swap ability. And I don't know if the game is meant to be even played that way. I don't know how they feel about that. But it's because of that weapon swap ability is that you allow multiple uses of this ability. And it actually turns it into like a viable clearing minion. Now, ideally, you want to have 2 copies, right? And then every time you weapon swap into a copy, you basically get a fresh set of minions with these barrels. Is the ideal way. So why am I bringing that up? The reasoning is because then it puts the best in slot class is the Gemling Legionnaire, because you can have double the set of supports. And with all the buffs, the Gemling Legionnaire, like it's +2 minion level now. So it doesn't have the downsides of not having the minion nodes in the beginning like the Witch does, because it has +2 to skill, right? So it's kind of weird. It's like you don't want to like have a specialized class for minions, but the more you look at it and what you want to do with your like variety of skills and stuff, is it's the Gemling Legionnaire if you're playing ranged specters. It's just because you can have multiple copies of the same skill, things like last gasps that are good. Specifically with this build, it's like scatter shot with fork, with reach, with all this AoE. You know, and it makes it really kind of fun to use, kind of weird and awkward to play. So we're gonna see what they do with this, right? It's totally not intended, but it's a fun skill to have. All right, next up on the list is the Regurgitating Vulture. I know it's kind of like it's a minion that you'll see all the time, but man, once you put in the same set of skills on it with like scatter shot, fork, and you have a decent amount of them, there's just poison everywhere. It's really fun to map with these guys. It's fun, but just like all specters with Dawn of the Hunt, is they fall off endgame. You really can't boss with them. And it's unfortunate that they decided to make the gas on these guys undetonatable. So you can't blow it up with firewall, right? It might be way overpowered, but man, it would make the game really fun, right? Having more interactions with these specters. So in 0.3, hopefully they make some changes, you know? Maybe they allow us to do more combinations with specters and stuff. So you have specters that put gas out for you, and then you can detonate them yourself. There's a lot of things that they could do. So it'll be interesting to see like what they actually decide, because there's a lot of work to do. It's still early access. So I guess you just gotta let them kind of cook. And the other downside with these guys, or with just minions in general, because there's no convocation, once again, they're outside of range. So you could weapon swap with these guys. It's just the only issue is when you weapon swap with them, they also have a melee attack. So if they get spawned within melee range, they'll start melee attacking instead of doing ranged attacks, which is like another concern for specters, is because certain specters, when they have multiple attacks in AI, a lot of times they'll do the attack you don't want them to do. So you have really good specters out there with really interesting abilities, but they'll only do the interesting ability like maybe once every 10 seconds or something. So it really kind of limits what kind of specters you kind of want. Next up is the fan favorite, the Cultist Archer. This guy is really fun. It's actually really fun. Same type of setup, you know, scatter shot, fork, a lot of area of effect. The only downside with a lot of these guys that have these really like nice abilities, like even the Sun Priest, is it's on a cooldown. So the reason why they're not shooting right now is I just did a weapon swap. So every time you swap them, right, they go on cooldown, or the cooldown resets. And I get it, that's there for you know, balance and stuff like that. So with these guys, it's the way you play them is you just kind of run around. So that way their cooldown kind of resets as you're playing. And the only way to reduce that cooldown too is ingenuity. So it would be nice if, you know, we get more ways to reduce skill cooldown, because it's just like what it's just like what Mark Roberts said, right? At some point in time, your build should feel powerful. So more ways to kind of like boost this build specifically, because this is like a really fun mapping build. There's just like poison arrows going in everywhere, or poison flower chaos explosions. It's like really rewarding specter to play. It's like a really rare or really unique range specter. So the next minion up, right, for ranged minions, this one's a caster. It's the Vaal Skeletal Priest. Now these guys have a really kind of unique lightning ability. This is not an ability the player can have. It's like this leaping lightning ability, and every time it leaps, it's actually it can overlap in shotgun. The only problem is with these guys is the cast time is so long. So ideally, the way you'd play this is by taking advantage of the weapon swap mechanic, which is basically putting 2 copies of these guys and then weapon swapping them to just get this like constant barrage of this like long range area clearing lightning ability. But it does fall down just like the other specters, you know, towards the end, and for bossing it's not that good. But having it, as you can see, it's like a really fun ability. And the problem too is because there's no convocation, these skeletons move really slow. So to play it, you have to like really abuse the weapon swap. So I don't know what they're gonna do about that. Hopefully they, you know, there's a good solution that's just not destroying the weapon swap, because if there's not a good solution and you take away the weapon swap, you're basically just removing another way of playing. which hopefully that's not something that they'll decide to do. Have you chosen what league starter will be? I'm gonna put out a leveling guide. It's basically fucking frost mages. Walmart Spark Mage. Yeah, basically a Walmart Spark Mage, but it's really good, dude. It feels good, right? Look at the clear and shit. It's pretty fun. It's just a fun way to, like, you know, use another Spectre, but because of how it is and like how Spectres are in the game and how slow they move, you know, it end up being used as like a kind of like a meme build. Well, it basically is a meme build, but it's a really fun meme build. So hopefully they do something good about it and we get some like fun things we could do. All right, our next up on the range minions is Iron Thurmaturge. So this one's kind of like a not one that's super popular, or I guess it's kind of, there's a lot of really good Spectres out there with really good abilities. Like this one is pretty good. It's decent. It's got a lot of range, got a good coverage. You know, it does clearing pretty well. It's just there's a lot of like good range Spectres out there that all kind of suffer from basically endgame damage scaling. And the cost of these guys are a little bit pricey. It's 100, right? So a couple things that would really, well, one main thing that'll really make Spectres kind of viable is lowering the spirit cost. The other thing though that we don't know about, like what we saw in the beginning video, was if they do include elite Spectres that have like a special sort of damage modifier. Because if these guys were doing Death Knight damage, it could easily get out of control. Because elite Death Knights do somewhere around like 800k to 1 million a hit. So if these fireballs were doing like 1 million and then you have 10 of them, you know, it's more than 10 million DPS. It could get kind of like out of control. But I don't know. It would be interesting to see what they're going to do, right? Like there's a lot of really good Spectres out there that have really interesting abilities. But then once again, we're taking advantage of the weapon swap ability to put them in our range. Because another thing with like range Spectres is because they don't move when they attack, it's easy to be out of distance. And then you're at the mercy of like presence area again. So it gives you this kind of clunky way of playing. You either move out of range to where they go in wisp form, to where they follow you, or you're going to have to take advantage of weapon swap to resummon them. And either way, it's just kind of weird and it's like not that good. How to get those minions? Oh, so these guys, shit, I forgot to mention on each of these segments where I got these minions. These guys are from Act 1, right outside Ogham Manor. If you go right outside Ogham Manor, you'll find groups of these bandits. One of them is an Iron Thurmaturge, and every attack they cast 2 fireballs. So you get a bunch of these guys, and they just like fireball laser cover places. And the good thing about these guys too is when you resummon, they immediately attack. So there's no charge up time, there's no cool time. They don't have a separate ability. Well, that's not true. They have a close range flamethrower ability, and that flamethrower ability does actually really good damage. So this is another fun like Spectre to just have, right? So big shout out to the Iron Thurmaturge. Here's another Spectre that's really good, but it has a little bit of some weirdness to it. It's the Doryani's Elite, right? Everyone has seen this. The fire variation is better than the lightning variation because the lightning variation actually has a cooldown on its ability. So I know everyone was hoping that they would just spam that lightning ability, that explosion, and it would be really good. But there's actually a cooldown associated with the lightning one, so it's not as fun. What you're looking at here is the fire one. And these guys are actually really, really fun to use. There's a couple drawbacks, which is kind of weird, is whenever you summon them, they have to spread out. So when you do your weapon swap, they actually spread out. They don't just fire immediately. If they fired immediately, that would make them 1,000 times better. But if you look at the range of their spread, it's pretty crazy, right? I mean, elite versions of these guys with extra damage would be amazing. Easily making the game kind of overpowered. Or making these guys like kind of top tier. Which is, I don't know. I think it's fine. I think it would be fun, right? Maybe let these guys have their day in the sun. But we'll see how GGG feels about it, because there's a lot of good things that you can add in with these guys and other skills and overlapping things, and you know, that would make them like really kind of fun to use. Make them best in slot. The thing is, the thing with Spectres, right, is the way that they're built. I did that build, but my PC can't handle it. Yeah, I know. The one thing that's the greatest thing about Spectres is that all the gear's the same, right? And then the playstyle changes depending on what Spectre you plug in. So that's what kind of makes playing Spectres really kind of fun, is that you just farm kind of one set of gear, and then the playstyle just changes depending on what Spectre you use. So that's kind of why, you know, minions are a big deal and everyone wants to have fun with them, because look at all the different things you could do with one set of farmable gear, right? You could play like melee specters, although the class does kind of change, you know? You want to use a Lich for Rupture the Soul if you are playing melee, but for playing ranged specters, like, the style changes just depending on what specter you use. You use Vaal Skeletal Priest, you got a lightning variation, you got this fire variation with Doryani's Elite, you know, you got another fireball variation with the Iron Thurmaturge, and then there's all these other ones that exist that you could use to kind of change up the gameplay, which makes it really fun. So once again, we'll see what's up, we'll see what happens. Hype is kind of high. Honorable mention, the Vaal Guards, right? In the beginning of point 2, Vaal Guards was the one that everyone found, everyone really liked. To me, the only reason they're good is because their cost is really low. It's 50 spirit. You know, they do decent damage, they shotgun and everything like that. They're basically amped up versions of the Arsonist. You know, they have a higher health pool. The reason I don't like them is because there's a long delay before they attack. Like, you gotta wait for like the gas to go out and then it explodes. And then the range is actually kind of short, right? They only throw like right to about here. And then you gotta wait for the next attack. And they're not bad. They're a good specter, but I feel like there's other ones that are better, you know, that are more fun, that are really decent specters to have and stuff like that. But these guys are good, and what makes them good, it really is the spirit cost. So hopefully we get, you know, more reduced spirit cost for specters, and, you know, increased damage. And these guys too are one of the only ones that have a more expanded like information tab when you look into them. So, you know, GGG, I know, is probably working on it and doing all this stuff, so we can only kind of just hope and pray that they kind of do all the specters justice, because there's a lot of fun interactions with a lot of different specters. I didn't cover even, maybe I only covered like 1% of the specters, you know, but there's a lot of really good ones out there. So hopefully they get to it and we get some good stuff in point 3. And that's the end of the list. So we covered a few specters, you know, not that many, honestly. There's a ton of specters. We did like 4 melee ones and a bunch of ranged ones, but they all suffer from kind of like the same kind of things that hopefully we see some changes, right? Like, we need some new support gems to give them some AoE attacks. They need better endgame scaling. I don't know what they're going to do about the weapon swap. It's not operating probably like they want to, you know. There's no convocation in here. There needs to be more ways of reducing cooldowns on the specters that have that are cooldown related attacks, like the casters and stuff like that. Their movement speed. There's a lot of things that, you know, need to be done, but it all has to be done like on an individual basis, which, you know, it's still early access. So there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of places it can only go up. Let's hope we get something good. And yeah, once again, thanks for all the support. Thanks for watching the video. You made it this far. Help me out. Like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And I'll see you guys in 0.3.